In the 1930s, the Romanian government was looking to modernize their armed forces by adding a new fighter to their aging air force. At the time, the Romanian Air Force contained mostly license-built Polish aircraft, and the government was not expecting any bids from its own aircraft industry. Romanian aircraft producers Industria Aeronautică Română, or I.A.R, surprised them by submitting several prototypes. Originally, the contracts were won by the Polish-designed PZL P-11 and PZL P-24, though production of these aircraft would result in the I.A.R incorporating parts of their design into their new prototype. The prototype had a low-wing design, as the project lead designer Dr. Ion Grosu was convinced that it was better than the PZL gull-wing design. The aircraft was officially unveiled in 1939. The prototype was 26 feet long and had a 32-foot wingspan. It was powered by a Gnome Rome 14K engine, had a top speed of 317 miles per hour and a maximum range of 590 miles. It was also armed with 2 FN Browning machine guns, which seems very weak, but this was just a prototype and heavier armament was planned. The plane was designed by I.A.R completely forward of the tail, though the tail was taken directly from the Polish P-24. The Romanian government was impressed and ordered 100 of the new fighters. There was a number of problems which resulted in the first fighter's delivery being pushed back. A number of changes as well as trade restrictions resulted in the I.A.R-80s not being able to roll out of production until January of 1941. The restrictions also meant that the armament needed to be dropped down to just 4 machine guns. This resulted in its firepower feeling underwhelming at times, a key remark made by the Romanian pilots flying it. When Romania joined the Axis in April of 1941, it removed the export restrictions placed by the Germans and allowed I.A.R to increase the armament to the original planned 6, as well as replacing the engine with a more powerful I.A.R K14-100A engine. This version was called the I.A.R-80A, and it was the first I.A.R variant to see combat, as it would be used when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union in the summer of 1941. However, only 8 aircraft were completed in time for the invasion. The Romanians still had a problem, as their air force lacked an effective strike fighter, with the role being filled by obsolete I.A.R-37s. Their age meant that they'd be easy targets for both enemy aircraft and ground fire. German Ju-87s were originally supposed to succeed the I.A.R-37s and fill the role, but with the Germans deferring the order, a new plane was needed quickly. Rather than build a new plane from scratch, I.A.R decided to build on the success of the I.A.R-80 and convert it into a fighter bomber. This modification meant that the I.A.R-81s entered combat only a few months after the I.A.R-80s. The response from pilots was negative, however, as they complained the bomber rack created a serious amount of drag and badly affected performance. The progression of the war paired with the delivery of the Ju-87s meant that the I.A.R was no longer required as a dive bomber, so the centerline bomb rack was finally left behind. The new variant, called the I.A.R-81C, returned to a fighter role, as this was deemed more important with the mounting threat of heavy bombers. On top of this, new German 20mm guns were added to finally fix the armament restrictions and attempt to keep it effective in the later stages of the war. Multiple attempts were made to improve the engine as well. The first failed as the Germans were unable to provide the BMW 801 engine due to an extremely high demand. The second failed after tests with the Junker Zumo 211 proved unsuccessful as excessive vibrations in flight put an end to the program. The I.A.R entered service in February of 1941 and initial pilot reactions were positive. They applauded the maneuverability but recommended that the firepower of the engine be improved to remain effective in modern air combat. The 80s were involved in combat from day 1 of Operation Barbarossa, June 22, 1941, when Romania joined the war against the Soviet Union alongside the Germans, Italians, and other Axis countries. The aircraft were assigned to the Romanian Pure Fighter Group, Grupul 8, tasked with supporting the 3rd and 4th Romanian armies in the south. The 80 achieved its first aerial victory not even a week later on the 27th. By the end months of 1941, the new I.A.R was introduced into service as well, with the first 81s entering combat on the form of a dive bombing mission over the port of Odessa. However, the I.A.R-81 would eventually prove more useful as a ground attack fighter than a dive bomber. By the end of 1941, the 80 had racked up over 100 claimed kills of Soviet aircraft in the air or on the ground, while only 21 80s were lost. The aircraft proved more than a match for any aircrafts the Russian fielded this early in the war. The I.A.R-80s and 81s flew mainly support missions in 1942, taking part in covering the advancing southern armies. Over the next year, the 80 enjoyed numerous successes, but the poor firepower became more and more apparent as the months passed, with some 80s already getting recalled for home defense. In September of 1942, the Battle of Stalingrad had begun, and I.A.R. 80s and 81s fought over the city alongside the Germans in a constant struggle for air superiority. I.A.R.s battled until December, when the introduction of more modern Soviet fighters resulted in them being removed to defend Romania from Allied bombing. Over the last 3 months, however, they would accumulate 45 more claimed kills while only losing 11 aircraft. Over the next 2 years, I.A.R. 80s were refitted with 20mm guns and tasked with the defense of the Ploiești oil field, as well as a number of other strategic locations. They would generally face B-24s at high altitude, and by 1944, the I.A.R. 80s and 81s were proving to be obsolete. The P-51 bomber escorts easily had 150 km/h on them, on top of the I.A.R.s having more trouble at high altitudes. The I.A.R.s did have some success, however, when facing aircraft like the P-38, especially at lower altitude. One such occurrence of this was on June 10, 1944, when I.A.R. 81Cs attacked American P-38s at low altitude. The P-38 proved inferior to the I.A.R.s at low altitude, with 23 P-38s shot down to only 4 losses. The event would be the single worst loss rate during a single mission of any American fighters during World War II, with it around 30%. This would be the last great success of the I.A.R., as due to the high casualty rates of the pilots following them, 32 pilots including 11 aces were killed in only 4 months. A few months later, any remaining I.A.R.s were grounded and replaced with the superior Bf-109 G6s. While I.A.R.s were still used rarely after Romania switched sides in December of 1944, production officially stopped. Its last mission took place on May 8, 1945. Any remaining I.A.R. 80s were either turned into I.A.R. 80 DCs, which were used as trainers, or scrapped. The last World War II era I.A.R.s ended their service in 1952, with the Soviets providing new Yak-18 trainers. In the end, the I.A.R. 80 and 81 were successful fighters and ground attackers respectively. They ended the war with 539 confirmed kills and another 90 probable, with only 220 being lost in combat. Even if you don't count the 90, that leaves with a kill-to-loss ratio of 2.5 to 1, certainly a respectable amount for any nation. Thank you for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed the video, it really helps the channel out, and comment below on what you think I could improve for next time. All my sources are listed below in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and make sure to check out my Twitter. See you next time.